let's talk about the strategy. So Mercedes and Lewis were the favourites to start with. Lewis got a brilliant start and took P1 into turn 1. Fantastic. And like you said, it was wheel-to-wheel racing, bold move, no contact, which was quite nice, and no one was forced off the track entirely. I think Max went wide on his, by himself, got a bit of understeer and went wide. But nevertheless, both of them went clean into turn 2, which is what we want to see. Max and Red Bull were the first cars to box, and the undercut seemed to pay off. I mean, they did it twice. They undercut the Mercedes team twice, and it paid off hugely. There's no doubt that Red Bull did the near perfect pit stop, but could have Mercedes done anything differently?
The thing seemed to be that early on, Hamilton said that he felt that his tyres were okay and was comfortable to go long. And then later on, I think the way that Red Bull pitted, their timing meant that Hamilton couldn't try and go long again. I think Mercedes wanted to allow Hamilton to go longer because he's just very good at doing that and extending his pace further into the life of his tyres. They just didn't really give him that option, I suppose. And also Hamilton perhaps insisted, we don't really know, or maybe Mercedes were on board with it as well, on going longer. Because the first pit stop, Hamilton pitted on lap 10 for hards. That was his first undercut attempt. But after he pitted, that was when Hamilton was like, we heard on the radio anyway, I don't know exactly when the message was from, but we heard him say, oh, my tyres are okay.
Yep.
It was 4 laps later that he ended up pitting. And then when Verstappen came out past him, he was like 6 seconds in the lead.
Yes,
it was a huge difference. So then he had to make up this difference. And it was shortly after that then Max, it was once he'd caught up with him that Max then pitted again lap 30. And was immediately followed by Perez, of course. Perez, I think, maybe didn't come into the equation quite as much as Red Bull perhaps wanted him to. I felt like later on in the race he was too far back to sort of force Hamilton to make a certain decision either way. Hamilton kind of had the freedom to pit, I think.
It's interesting because throughout this year we've been quite critical on number 2 drivers or teammate drivers not being in the position they need to be. And now, ironically, Perez is in the position he needs to be. But P3 is great, but like you said, he was 15, 20 seconds off Max Verstappen. I think Max boxed, came out, overtook Perez on the back straight, the one I mentioned earlier, and then Perez boxed that lap. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Perez is doing a great job. And obviously he didn't have his water bottle from the start of the race as well. So he was trying very hard throughout that whole race. I can't imagine how physical it would be. But he didn't get lapped, but obviously he had that 20-second deficit to his teammate where he could get past and where Max boxed and still managed to catch him. So Perez is in the right place, but just not in the right place, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, he was, but he wasn't. As for what, I don't know, could Mercedes have done anything different? I felt like Red Bull just overall didn't give him the option. They really controlled the pace of the strategy up front. And Verstappen had the pace overall. So they
really did.
They kind of, whether they had set themselves up to fail by trying to go longer, I'm not quite sure. But, and of course, Bottas as well, speaking of teammates, wasn't really in the picture at all. So he was having his own little battle trying to work his way up.
We'll talk about that later on.
Yes, I'm sure we will.
But no doubt, Mercedes, they had a good strategy, but Red Bull's strategy was just that much better. Was just perfect. And like you said, Perez really didn't play into the hands of that Red Bull strategy. He was just there cruising around in P3, really thirsty, whilst Max and Lewis battled in the along the track. But yeah, Mercedes. For a Mercedes track, this is what I love about this year. This has been a Mercedes track for as long as I can remember. It's a bit like Russia. But Lewis loves it here. He's won loads of times here. He's really comfortable here. And yet, Red Bull just cruise their way to victory.
It must have been really galling for Perez going around the track seeing all those massive signs saying, when you drive, never drink.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not drinking, trust me.
That must have been really quite irritating.